Thank you for tuning in to Love in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, the podcast about how to live life with love. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to go to find long-lasting love using the most innovative and accurate algorithm based in scientific palmistry. Tired of superficial connections? Start your free soulmate connection membership today at loveinyourhands.com. Now here's your host, Cynthia Clark, palm reading consultant and compatibility expert. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Cynthia Clark, and I am always kind of reinventing our show here. So if in case you didn't notice, I changed the title of our show to from Healthy Love to Love in Your Hands. And that was just to be more in alignment with my brand and what I'm really here to help you guys with, which is to live life with love. And love really is in your hands. So in every show, I'm planning on bringing in some palmistry. And because that's being true to me as a palm reading consultant and compatibility expert, I always look at everything first and foremost through your actual hands, because that is where you can think of it as your mirror to your soul. So it's going to show you all of the things about your relationships. It's going to show you your emotional system. It basically teaches you who you are on that love level so that you can open up to the full potential that you deserve in love. So today's topic, we are looking at commitment, which is a huge topic for a lot of people. And you can actually tell in your hands whether or not you are ready for commitment. Okay, so this is kind of a juicy thing to check on your hands. And by the way, a lot of people think of this as what they used to call the marriage lines. Okay, now I would like to dispel the myth here that marriage lines do not mean marriage. Okay, because I don't know if there's a piece of paper attached to that line or not. You know, what constitutes a commitment, right? It has to do more with an emotional attachment. So I prefer to call these the affection lines. Okay, so they are located underneath your little finger, and they're going to be on the very edge of your hand. We call this the percussion part of your hand, and they're going to be just above the heart line, which is a major line in your hands that typically starts from that edge of that little finger, heads up towards either the middle finger or the index finger. And that is another whole lesson, which we're not going to get into right now. But I want you to look at the little lines just above that heart line. Those are called the affection lines. Now, most people have between 1 and 3 of these in their hands, which is perfect. And if you don't have any, that just means you haven't had a deep emotional attachment. But you know what? These lines actually do change. So they can ebb and flow based upon your free will decisions. Okay, so if you look at these lines, they should be very short. They should just barely jut into your palm surface. And pay particular attention to the top line, like whatever the uppermost line is, the one closest to the little finger. The longer that line is, or if it wraps either around your little finger or if it juts down towards your heart line, those are things that actually indicate that you're not ready for commitment. Okay, now if the line is just short and straight, it means that you are ready for commitment, or you are committed already. So just take a look at those lines and see where you fall. And by the way, if you are in a committed relationship and you have one of those funky things going on with that line, that means that you're cutting yourself off to the full potential of what you could be in that relationship. So that would be, again, a whole nother conversation. But it's kind of fun to take a look. So anyway, that's today's palmistry lesson. And now I'm super excited to bring in our very special guest today. We have Brooke Bergman. She is a relationship expert and coach. She's been working with individuals and couples and families for over 10 years, helping them to learn how to give and receive more love. Yay, I love that. So thank you so much, Brooke, for coming on the show.
Yay. Thank you so much for having me, Cynthia.
So tell us, how did you get into doing this type of work? I mean, we all have a story, so I want to hear your story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, gosh, the question is where to start. So I've been working as a marriage and family therapist. I'm actually a licensed mental health practitioner here in the state of California, and I've been licensed since 2012. Um, and I I've just always been an incredibly empathic and attuned person. And I've really been curious about what is it that gets in the way of people living a better life. Before I became a therapist, I taught high school English, and I noticed that some kids were more able to learn and some kids were not. And I noticed that the kids who were unable to learn, usually there was something going on. And I wanted to know more. And so I went into the psychology and relationship field to get my questions answered because I'm very, very curious.
Yeah.
Um, and then, um, I became especially interested in couples and relationship work after actually my own divorce, and I really I was going through my own therapy, and I really wanted to know why it failed and what I could do better. And I really wanted to own my part in the demise of the relationship and set myself up for success in any new relationships I had moving forward. So it was partially, personal, um, but then also professional because I was working with couples at the time. So I was,
Hmm.
helping couples reconnect and figure out why they were fighting and why they weren't getting along, and um, just helping them move towards each other instead of away from each other, and helping them uncover the blocks, because the thing that I would see over and over were the blocks that would prevent people from receiving the love that their partner was literally trying to give them right there in front of me.
Yeah.
And so I just got really curious about why that was, both in my own life and in the lives of my clients. And I guess curiosity is the big driving factor for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And they don't really teach you much in school about relationships, do they?
No,
Mm.
they don't. I mean, in my master's program, we started learning about that. We started studying, family systems and individuals and that sort of thing. But yeah, before my master's degree, there wasn't much. It was just all seems like such a mystery, like why some people got along and why some people didn't, and why some things fell apart. And it all just seems like a mystery. And I knew there had to be more. I knew there had to be more answers. So
Sure.
I looked for them.
And once you ask the questions, it's funny how the answers start popping up, right?
It is amazing. Yeah. Once you start being curious and open to whatever the answers might be, they do start arriving.
Yeah. So let's talk about commitment
Okay.
and men, because this is such a mystery, as you were just
Yeah.
mentioning. It's like, I think to a lot of us,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, what qualities do the men who commit have versus
Yeah.
who don't? Like, what have you
Yeah.
observed?
So this is an interesting thing because I think that there are there are a lot of factors at play. And what I would say is that men across the board actually deeply want to commit. that I think there's this, at least I hear it, and it's sort of like the Instagram life coach, right? We all see that's kind of happening right now, where I see a lot of women complaining about the sort of like non-committal man out there, and how men just don't want to commit, and they're flaky and they're not gentlemen and this sort of thing. But really, I see men all the time committing, and it's not necessarily a type of man, because I see actually both healthy men and unhealthy men committing. In fact, I have a good friend of mine who, I mean, she was essentially love bombed into a marriage, um, you know, which is a whole nother discussion about that sort of like toxic men who will sort of entrap a woman into a commitment.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I refer to those as the fatal attractions.
yes, the
Yeah.
fatal attractions. And
Mhm.
so it's interesting, because I think when women say that men don't want to commit, I kind of look at them like, well, no, like they men I meet far and above want to commit. It's just that they haven't found somebody that they feel safe enough committing to. Because men are actually really vulnerable when they're in a committed relationship, even more so than women, because women, our emotional, I'm going to say vulnerability is sort of dispersed with our mate, and but also our female friends and our sister and our mom, and like we talk to a lot of people about our sort of emotional inner world. But men really don't. They
Right.
have I mean, they have their male friends, but they don't really share their innermost.
No, they're more into like watching football and talking about
Yeah,
the game. And
right.
yeah, and it's almost, I think a lot of men look at it like, well, if I share that kind of deep vulnerability stuff, I'll just be brushed off, or,
Mhm.
oh, I'm never going to talk to that guy again. Like he's too, like, that's just weird.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so that's not how men talk to other men. And so the only place that they really experience that really deep, vulnerable, emotional intimacy is usually with their, um, if they're heterosexual, their female partner.
Makes
Um,
sense.
and so it's pretty risky for a man to fully commit, you know?
Right. Because if it goes
Um,
bad, he's really going to be hurting.
he's really going to be hurting. And there are some statistics about men and divorce, and men sort of emotionally fare worse than women do after a divorce, which is interesting. You wouldn't
Yeah.
expect that, you know?
Well, so just as an example, my husband and I are both in our second marriage, and
Hmm.
my husband waited 20 years for me. Like it
Wow.
took him a long time to recommit,
Right.
but he always wanted to find somebody,
Right.
and whereas for me, it only took me a little over 2 years.
Right.
So for me, it was much, much faster. So
Hmm.
I'm wondering if a lot of men who do go through a divorce
Hmm.
have this sort of like longer period before they end up finding the next
Yeah.
person. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's true for some men. I think that it takes them a while to just open up again, to feel safe again. And so I think the overarching thing that makes a man commit is meeting a woman that he can relax around,
Hmm.
that he can feel safe, that he can be himself around.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of women will meet a man and think he's great and all this, except for, A, B,
Mm-hmm.
and C, right? And ultimately that's not really very loving, and a man can pick up on that. Men are sensitive and intuitive as well. They just sort of can't articulate it in the ways that women do. And so they can sense if they're not being loved or accepted, which if you're not being loved and accepted, you're not safe, you know?
Mm. So
So,
would you suggest to a woman who is looking for her man to
uh-huh.
commit that
Yeah.
maybe she shouldn't be so judgmental or
Yeah. Yeah. That she should probably not be so judgmental, critical, and also demanding of a commitment. I hear a lot of women say to me, well, we've been together for this amount of time. It's time for us to have the talk because what is he doing? And the thing is that, I mean, it's okay to talk, but I hear a lot of women start to make like ultimatums,
Hmm.
and ultimatums really, in their essence, aren't very safe, you know?
Right. Yeah, because it really puts pressure. It puts pressure on it.
Right. It puts pressure on the relationship. And then all of a sudden, the man is feeling like he's not choosing,
Hmm.
right? He's not choosing this relationship. All of a sudden, he feels backed into a corner, which doesn't feel safe,
Right. Because then
you
it puts
know?
you in that like fight or flight energy and your amygdala gets
Right.
hijacked in your brain and you're just like,
Yeah.
"Ah, I'm going to protect
Exactly.
myself. And the best way to protect
Right.
myself is to run.
Is to run. And now then you'll see men then start to kind of avoid, kind of run away, but they're like, it's not that they want to break up with her, they just like are feeling this pressure now that
Hmm.
they maybe weren't feeling before in the early stages of dating.
Mm.
Yeah.
So, do you still feel like it's good for people to have conversations about commitment?
Mhm. For
And
sure.
okay,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
just without the attachment,
that's
maybe?
a good way of saying it, Cynthia, that maybe without the attachment to the outcome, you
Hmm.
know? Um, I think it's actually great boundaries to say what you want, you know?
Sure.
To just and be very forthcoming about that, even
Mhm.
on the first date, if and not in like a weird way, but just in a casual, like, yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
Right. Yeah, set
You
the
know?
expectation without saying it's got to be you or it's got to be tomorrow. you know?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not like we have to get married tomorrow. We're not going to the courthouse on our second date. But in
No.
general, just making it clear that that's what you're looking for. And also living with the expectation that men are looking for that too. Um, and that just because he doesn't commit to you doesn't mean that he didn't want commitment.
Right.
And that's a painful pill to swallow, I think.
Yeah. But again, it goes to compatibility, and maybe you
Yeah.
really aren't the best match for each other. And
Yeah.
there could be a lot of reasons why you're not the best match. And it doesn't have
Yeah.
anything to do with you necessarily as a person.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. But people do and women take it so personally when a man doesn't want to commit to them. And it's like, well, but maybe he wasn't your partner. Like
Right.
he wasn't yeah, compatible with you. I mean, obviously the two of you weren't aligned in your ability to connect.
So when would you say it's good for people to realize, like, let's say they're struggling.
Yeah, okay.
Let's say they're trying to make it work and it's just not working.
Mhm.
At what point do people need to say, well, you know what, maybe we just really aren't compatible for each other and we should move on? Are there
Yeah.
indicators that could
Mm,
help people kind of gauge that?
sure. It's interesting. I've broken up with people on the first date or kind of 6 months or a year or even, I mean, I mentioned I was married before, after 12 years. Um, and so I think that people misconstrue commitment as like the thing that will make me feel safe for the rest of my life.
Yes, that's great advice because, people, yeah, you have to really go in with a strong
Mhm.
foundation. I like
Yeah.
to think of it like I like to think of relationships sort of like trees, you
Okay,
know?
yeah.
And so like if you have a tree with the nice deep roots and then
Mhm.
the nice big beautiful branches, then you've got a solid relationship. But what
Mhm.
if you don't have those roots, like your tree's gonna
Right.
fall over,
Right.
you know? So,
Yeah. But so going back to your question of like what are some of the indicators? And I would say that one of the indicators is just a literal lack of regular connection, lack of being able to be on the same page for the most part.
yeah,
I think that obviously in all couples, even healthy long-term relationships, there are going to be things that you are not on the same page about, and that's okay. I think there's some healthy sort of independent room for healthy independence.
right.
um but I'm talking about, like, in general, are your values pretty much the same? Do you kind of have like general agreements about how life should go,
Mhm.
or are you are you a homebody that likes is dating, somebody who wants to go out every single night?
Right. So
Like,
so going in and if you're trying to fix him,
yeah,
like, oh, I'm gonna fix that, or I'm gonna, I'll fix him
yeah,
on that. Like that's
yeah.
probably one of the worst things you could
Oh
say
my gosh.
because that's just
Yeah.
setting yourself up for disappointment, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I love that you say that because I think a lot of people see the incompatibilities and then they think, well, we can work on that. And it's like, no, like if you can't accept your partner fully as they are today, then it's probably an indicator that you're not going to work long term.
Hmm.
um like, it's not that you have to necessarily love every sort of dysfunctional thing that they do,
Right.
but in general, can you live with it and can you accept it today?
Hmm.
Because being in a relationship sort of hoping for or planning for the other person to change is really a subtle form of controlling manipulation.
Yes, I agree. Yeah,
And I don't want to
definitely.
be with somebody who ultimately like just thinks I need to change. Like, granted, do we all need to grow? And I mean, I think that on some level we should be growing and changing, but the paradox of change is that we can't change unless we love ourselves and unless our partner loves us. We
Right.
don't really grow and change when our partner is criticizing us and asking us to change every day.
Right. That just makes it hard.
Yeah,
Harder.
it makes it really hard. And then
Yeah.
it goes back to kind of what I was saying earlier about things being unsafe.
Right.
Is that
Yeah.
if your partner is always saying, I want this to change or this to change or all these various things to change, all of a sudden it creates a really critical atmosphere, you
Mm.
know.
Right.
Um, my, I mean, I was about to tell a real sort of maybe story about my significant other and one of his exes, that the way we sort of talk about it is don't count.
Okay.
She would engage in sort of like counting behaviors that he would do,
Oh
you know.
no.
Yeah, and like she would literally count and then report to him and tell him, I
Like it's a
know.
report card or something.
Right, right. And it's like, oh, like that's number one, unsafe, and number two, so unsexy.
Yeah, I would say that's probably a huge turnoff for him. And
Well, needless to say, I mean, obviously I'm here and she isn't. And I don't mean that
right,
in like a pompous way. It's just more
right,
like a statement of like, this is how this is one of
mhm,
those things that happened,
right,
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
So, well, that's great advice. Like, I love all your advice. So, so women, if you're struggling with that commitment,
Yeah.
it's so helpful to take a look at yourself
Yeah.
and what are the actions that you're actually doing with your partner,
Yeah.
and really be objective about it, and look at it that way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And I think women, we're so, a lot of women that I work with in my practice are so into doing, doing, doing.
mhm,
And I think, we're all have careers and we work on things and we're sort of used to kind of making things happen.
mhm,
But relationships aren't like that. We
right.
can't make things happen.
No, we have to just allow them to unfold naturally.
Yes, like a flower. And you
Yeah.
can't say to a flower, why aren't you growing yet?
Yeah. You should bloom right now.
Right, you should bloom right now. But we do that so often to our relationships. And I see a lot of women doing this when they're wanting a commitment. And so, one of the things I encourage my clients to do is to speak more from their heart,
Mhm.
um, instead of like trying to get their partner to do something.
Mhm.
You can just speak about your heart and your feelings and what you're experiencing. So if even if you want to have that commitment conversation, it's just like, hey, we've been together a while, and I'm just kind of curious. Like, I would love to commit. I would love a commitment.
Mhm. There you
Right.
go.
And then you just ask, like we were
Right.
talking about in the very beginning, of just asking for what you want.
Right.
But so many women, I think, are anxious about what they want, and then maybe they don't feel worthy of it. And so they don't just plain out ask for
Right.
it. In a
Yeah.
non-judgmental, non-pressuring way. Just,
Mhm.
hey, I really love you, and I'm ready to commit. What are you thinking about that?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
And yeah, don't have the attachment to it, but yeah, just have that
Right.
conversation.
Right,
Um,
that conversation of like, I think we're pretty compatible. There's a lot
yeah.
of things that we are great at and all these things, and I love you, and we have great sex, or whatever it is.
Right.
Um, what do you think?
Yeah. Yeah. And just be real open to asking.
Yeah, and then just be open to what they have to say, because
Mhm.
part of relationship means being open to having those hard conversations sometimes.
Right.
Being able to hold a man's heart,
Mhm.
and being
Yeah.
willing to hear what he has to say,
Mhm.
which,
Communication, so important.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, which might be something to the effect of, I really like you and I feel committed to you, but maybe I'm not ready to be engaged,
Right.
or whatever it is, or this is what I need for us to
Yeah.
be engaged, right? Like, and then like
Then
get
you
curious.
know.
Right. And then
Right.
like,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a big mystery, but yeah,
right.
I think a lot of
Yeah.
women feel like, "Oh, well, he should have asked me," or, he should read my
Yeah.
mind, he should know. And it's like, "No, he shouldn't."
Right. Right. Like yeah,
Yeah.
he's actually not a mind reader.
Yeah, and that's such
And
a yeah, it's so unrealistic to expect that, you know?
yeah, yeah, but yeah, he should have, or like, he should just do this and this. He should just know. And it's like, well, how in the heck would he know? Like,
Yeah,
unless you
exactly.
tell him,
Right.
unless you share with him your heart. And I think so often we kind of want to circumvent that process.
Mhm.
Um,
Exactly.
but it's that process that actually shows we're ready for a committed relationship.
Mhm. Exactly.
That says, I'm emotionally mature enough to handle these kinds of hard conversations,
Yeah.
you know?
Perfect. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I mean, it does, right? But you and I both know, like, right. And I can confess that I've been caught up in my own anxiety, and right, when we're caught up in our own stuff, sometimes we project the shoulds onto our
Yes.
partner,
Right.
like, well,
Exactly.
he should do this, or you know, he needs to commit to me. But sometimes what I find is that women aren't committed to themselves,
Exactly. Yeah.
and what would that look like
Right.
if
Yeah.
they all of a sudden decided to commit to themselves and committed to loving themselves in the way that they're sort of demanding their partner to
hmm
do?
Mm,
What would transpire if they made that shift?
yeah. Wow. Definitely something to think about.
Yeah.
All righty. So, how do people work with you?
Yeah. So I work with both individuals, couples, and then I just started. I'm still looking for a good name for it, but the all I have right now is called the Members Academy, and it's an online videos that I upload every week about relationships and questions like this, and how to move through this, and the sort of the how to's of
hmm
everything that we've sort of talked about today. And you can find all of that at my website, www.brooke, that's Brooke with an E, Bergman, Bergman.com.
All right. That sounds awesome. So, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been really fun. And
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Cynthia. This is so
yeah,
fun.
yeah, I really appreciate it. And thank you for your wisdom. It's been great conversation.
I agree. Thank you.
And everybody, remember to live life with love. And we'll catch you again really soon. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Love in Your Hands. Please rate, review, and subscribe to show your support. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to find the secret ingredients to your soulmate. Start your free Soulmate Connection membership today using the most innovative and accurate algorithm to match you to potential long-lasting love, all at loveinyourhands.com.